All right. Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about podcasting. All right. So I promise that today's webinar is going to be direct, straight to the point, no fluff, all the substance that you need, and we'll get started immediately. I'd like to welcome everyone that's made out the time to join up. And those of us that are listening, please note that we're going to be expecting questions from you. If you want to send in your questions, which we will be addressing at the end of the presentation, just leave them in the chat area below. If you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up, make an indication that you can hear me clearly, loud and clear. If there's an issue with the audio, please let me know so that we can just move smoothly through the presentation. This is going to be a 15-minute presentation. I am going to do my very best. I'll do my record, and we will be diving into the questions immediately. I've attended webinars, and sometimes I feel like webinars take too long, and I just want to make sure that you get everything you need within this 45-minute time slot that I have created for our session. All right, so without further ado, let's dive in. Now, a little housekeeping before we get started. This is going to be a 45-minute webinar. The presentation is going to take 15 minutes, and then there's a question and answer session, which I will be devoting 30 minutes to. And then please note that some questions were submitted earlier by attendees. So we've already curated them. And while we're answering the questions that have been sent in earlier, do feel free to send in your extra questions in the chat area. If we can't handle them within the 45-minute window, we will do our best to send a response to you via email or some other channel. All right, so please stay to the end of this webinar to learn about the unique offer that we have that would help you set up your own podcast in 5 days. And note that, of course, I've said again, send in your questions in the chat area, and kindly mute your microphones until you're released to ask your questions. Now, today we're going to be talking about Learn Podcasting, and we're going to be discussing a few things. We're going to introduce what podcasting is, a few words about it, how to start a podcast. Our special offer is going to be discussed, and then we'll dive into our Q&A. Now, a bit of an introduction. So who am I? My name is Dr. Adabrim Chiajon. Yes, I am actually a doctor, and I'm a trained optometrist with over 20 years experience in ICT. What's an optometrist doing as an ICT professional? That's a conversation for another day. So in recent times, I served as the head of ICT at Studio 24 Nigeria. And one of my experiences in the area of podcasting and content creation started with procrastination, which is where a lot of us are today. We've said to ourselves, hey, I would really like to start a podcast. I would really like to put out my content regularly out there for people to enjoy. But I kept procrastinating, and most of us out there also are doing the same right now. We're procrastinating, pulling the trigger on setting up our podcast or pushing out our content until the pandemic happened. The pandemic was a come to Jesus moment for everybody, and I was top of the list. So during the pandemic, I attended many virtual events. I hosted several virtual events, and during one of those events, I was on a panel answering some questions, and I was really thrilled by the way the conversation was going. And I said to myself, more people have to hear this content, but I don't have a webinar, or I don't have a podcast, or I don't have a blog. I don't have a platform to share all of this good stuff. So I decided to set up my podcast. Now, my podcast was originally called the Design Course Academy Podcast, but eventually it evolved into the Traffic Conversations podcast. And I've been running it since the 20th of July, 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. Now, the podcast currently has over 5,000 downloads and has been listened to or has been heard in 51 countries and over 150 and over 149 cities globally. And we have over 75 episodes at this particular recording, this session, whatever you want to call it. So that has been my journey with podcasting. And why did I get into podcasting? Just like you, I felt that I needed to get my content out there. I felt like I needed my content to be curated so that people in the future, my kids, people who want to learn what I know, would have access to my content. So I went ahead and set up my podcast, and I've been publishing ever since. So before we go further, do remember there's going to be a special offer that's going to help you set up your podcast in 5 days. I just want to remind you so that you don't forget that we're going to be providing that. There's going to be hours of resources available, and we're also going to be talking about quite a lot that's going to be very valuable to your podcasting journey. So what about podcasting? First of all, what is a podcast? Now, if you don't know what a podcast is, or if you're not clear on what it is, let me just explain what it is. Basically, it's a collection of a series or of digital audio files. I like to simplify it by saying that it's actually you just opening your demand. It's recording content and listening on the device on demand, and it can be downloaded or listened to via the internet. And currently, podcasting has a growing market internationally, and as we speak, it's currently beginning to spread throughout the third world. I am recording this from a third world country right now, so I'm going to be making a lot of references to third world, and contexts that are within my experience. So please bear with me. However, I did learn podcasting from Western countries, so I'm going to be pulling heavily from that experience as well. In a few years, I believe, and statistics actually prove that there will be a new breed of billionaires, okay, that will be making their money based off of podcasting. And when I think of that, I think of a blogger, a local blogger here in my country called Linda Ikeji. Now, Linda Ikeji started out blogging in 2006, okay, after failing at business several times. And I think she actually went into blogging as a therapeutic expression or release. She failed at business several times, and she began to blog and basically sent out content about things that she had heard and her experiences and so on. And eventually she began to get noticed. Now, she started out posting her content at cyber cafes. She wasn't rich enough to even own a laptop, so she had to go to a cyber cafe to post her content. And at the time, blogging wasn't popular. Just like now, podcasting isn't as popular as blogging is. Today, when you talk about bloggers, everyone knows who a blogger is, everyone knows who a YouTuber is, but podcasting isn't as popular. And that's the same way it was back in 2006 for her. It wasn't popular, it wasn't the in thing, but she was doing it, and she kept doing it until 2010 when she hit her big break. Today, Linda Ikeji is worth over $40 million, and that is in a third world country. Okay, so that is an example of someone becoming a first mover in a field that isn't highly appreciated. Now, how much money do podcasters make? So we've talked about making money as a blogger, but how about podcasting? How much money do actual podcasters today make? So I have 3 examples here that I'm going to talk about. First is Joe Rogan. He is the host of the Joe Rogan Experience. He currently has over 190 million downloads per month, and he earns $30 million every year from his podcasts, okay? Second, we have Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hartstock, and they have approximately 35 million monthly downloads, and they earn $15 million every year. Okay, that's quite some money. And then finally, there's Dave Ramsey, who owns The Ramsey Show, and he currently has 13 million weekly listeners and earns nearly $10 million in annual revenue from his podcast. Now, these are millionaires, okay, from their podcasting content. Now, what are the 10 ways podcasters make money? So we've called out how much these individuals make and how exactly do they make money from podcasting. First of all, you can make money from affiliate marketing. Okay, so while you're podcasting and you're giving your content out for free, you can talk about either the gear you use to do your recording, or you can talk about different things, and then you can put the link to the items that you're marketing in the show notes of your podcast episode. And then once people listen to it and they feel like, okay, they want to purchase that item that you've marketed and they buy it, you get to make some money off the affiliate marketing. Second way to make money is through sponsorships and advertising. Okay, so you can get people to buy advert spots on your episodes, and then they pay you for showcasing their products within your episodes. The next is courses. You can record and publish courses and get people to buy them when you, of course, speak about them during your podcast episodes. Next, you can do coaching and consulting, because as a podcaster, you're seen as a thought leader. Okay, so people look at you and they think to themselves, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. And they believe that if they engage you to help them with their content or with their issues that are related to your area of expertise, you're someone that can guide them through the difficulties that they're going through. So you can actually make money through coaching and consulting. Another way is by crowdfunding and donations. People can actually decide that they want to support your podcast because your content has been so helpful to them. They want to give you money to ensure that you keep podcasting. One more way you can generate revenue is by having a premium platform where people who want to listen to premium content from you simply go there to listen to that content. Another way is events. As a podcaster, because you have an audience, you can set up events and then people can pay to attend those events. They can either be in-person physical events or they can be virtual events. One other way to take advantage of your podcast, of course, is by creating physical products. So you can have merchandise like T-shirts, mugs, and different things that people who listen to your podcast would like to buy in order to feel closer to you as the person who provides valuable content to them. One more way is through books. You can sell books. You can create ebooks and sell your books to your listeners. And then you can also make money through public speaking. All right. So these are different ways you can make money there. This is not an exhaustive list. There are other avenues, but these are the most popular ways you can generate money. Now, question, who can create a podcast? Now, you might be listening to me today and you're like, okay, well, podcasting is for people who are really special and they have some experience and all of that. Well, let's answer this question, okay? The short answer is anyone can. If you can talk, if you have friends who listen to you and when you start talking, they don't take off and run away when you start talking, then you can start a podcast. All right. Now, media has become democratized. What does that mean? It means that if you see someone doing something online, maybe they own a podcast or they have a YouTube channel or they have a website or anything that people do today with digital media or digital platforms, you have the ability to reproduce what they're doing. Why? Because free technology makes it possible for you to do that. Okay, you can recreate a TV station on YouTube. You can recreate a radio station either by internet radio platforms or even podcasts. All right. So there's no need to look for expensive equipment. Back in the day, if you wanted to start a radio station, you needed tens of millions of naira to start up your radio station. But today, it will shock you that all you really need is your phone to start your own radio station or your podcast. I digress. Let's move on. So there's no need for expensive equipment. And the most important thing is that you control your content and how much content you produce. Okay. If you were to depend on a radio station to put your content out there, you would need to pay them a lot of money for airtime, and then they will tell you how long you can talk and what you can even say on their station, especially when they feel like they don't like what you're talking about. So these are things that you gain freedom from by simply owning your own platform. And then the icing on the cake is you get a high profit margin when eventually your podcast is monetized. So that means you have a low cost of generating your content, but you have a high headroom for profit because it's so cheap to create your content, but the profits, are definitely way up there. Now, there's something called podcasting formats. Here, I introduce them as types of podcasts, but let's just call them podcasting formats. So what kind of formats are there? So in podcasting, there are different types of formats. There's a solo format where you have an individual simply speaking into the microphone and discussing his ideas without any feedback from an audience or from a co-host. Then another format is the interview or Q&A format, where there's an exchange either with a co-host or a guest, or there's a Q&A coming in from the listeners. All right. Now, there's the documentary format, okay, where people cover issues and talk about incidents or different things that happen in real time or in real life. Then you have commentaries, you have dramatizations, and you have current affairs. These are just a few podcast formats that are out there. Now, I'm pointing out these formats because people are different, people's inclinations are different, and the kind of content you will produce will be favored by one of these podcasting formats. So just pay attention to these because when it's time for you to set up your podcast, you're going to need to keep these in mind. Now, in a few steps, we're going to be walking you through how to set up your podcast in real time. Okay, so have your phone handy, and then we're going to introduce you to you setting up your podcast. So how do you start a podcast? All right, so first of all, the most important person or the most important thing that we need to address is you. All right, you are the secret sauce, not the equipment, not the tools, not the technology. It is you. Your content is what people come to the podcast for, not the microphone, not the equipment or the platform. Okay, so the very first thing you have to do is you have to be authentic. All right, you have to be authentic, be yourself, but always give yourself room to improve. Now, when I first started podcasting and I heard myself after I recorded the episode, I hated it. All right. And if you haven't heard yourself recorded for the purpose of other people listening to it, be warned, you're going to hate it because there's the sound you hear from the inside of your ears. Okay, that's the sound that's how you think you sound, but there's a way people hear you when you talk, and that's what you hear when you record your voice and play back your voice from a phone or from a different device that captured your voice. So you have to listen to yourself, but always be eager to improve. Be eager to improve whenever you hear things that you need to change. Don't try to be someone else. Don't try to speak in a way that you feel will be accepted by somebody else. No. Just be yourself, be authentic, okay? But always look for ways to improve. All right. Over the years, I've done that. I've looked for ways to improve and I've kept improving myself. Every year, I keep putting pressure on myself to improve. Next thing you have to do, okay, before we get started on how to, get your podcast all set up, is you have to name your podcast. What will your podcast be called? All right. So in order to name your podcast, you have to consider two things. First, you have to consider the theme of your podcast. What is the theme? What is the subject matter that your podcast is going to be dealing with regularly? And secondly, who is your demographic? Who is your target demographic? Okay, when you identify the theme of your podcast and you identify who you're going to be talking to, these are very important things that you should consider because the way you name your podcast will reflect either properly or well or badly on the demographic that you're attempting to reach. Then next, you need to record your first 3 episodes. Okay, so I've talked about recording and I haven't talked about the equipment. So hang in there. So You have to record your first 3 episodes. Why is that? Because your first 3 episodes is going to give you the ammunition to begin to market your podcast when it eventually goes live. So the question I get a lot is, how long should my episodes be? I usually recommend start with a target of recording for 5 minutes. Just record for 5 minutes. But you know what? When you get a hang of it, you find out that you can actually record for longer. And but have a target of 5 minutes. And do you need professional gear? And the short answer is no. All right. Now, how often should you release your episodes? I recommend that you do a weekly release. So pick a day in the week and you decide, okay, at 12 midnight on this day or at 12 p.m. on this day, I will release my episodes. And when you do that, it gives people an expectation of when to expect your content. When I started, I released my content every week on Monday. So I recommend you do the same. Fix a date, fix a day in the week when you release your content regularly. So one other popular question that I get is, how do I get episode topics? Because people feel like, okay, I'm going to run out of things to say eventually. Well, if you do these things, you won't. First thing you need to do is stay within your wheelhouse, stay in your area of expertise. One thing I don't talk about politics, because yes, I may have an opinion, but I'm not an expert in politics. And if I attempt to speak about politics, I will mess it up. So always stay within your wheelhouse, okay? And be on the lookout for content, okay, for content topics that are relevant to your area of expertise. Keep a list of potential topics. I keep a virtual list of potential topics. I type it into my phone that is synchronized with my computer, and I keep a list of potential topics that I would like to cover in the future. Next, read books and listen to other podcasts. I get a lot of inspiration from books and other people's content. A lot. So I would recommend that you do the same. Read books around your area of expertise. There will be no shortage of content, believe me. Right, so let's dive into tools of podcasting. Are you ready? Are you ready to get going? Now, the very important thing that I want to share is this. There are free tools available. You don't have to break the bank to start podcasting, all right? So the first thing you need to get in your possession is, number one, a smartphone and an app called Anchor FM, all right? So install the app called Anchor FM on your smartphone right now, all right? If you have Anchor FM already on your phone, give me a thumbs up. If you're about to download it, give me a check mark sign, okay? Let me see that you're doing something about the content that you're hearing. Awesome. You have Anchor FM already installed. Brilliant. Well done. All right. Now, the next thing that you're going to need is a publishing tool. Now, I used to use a podcasting platform called Buzzsprout. All right. So Buzzsprout was not a recording tool. It was a publishing tool. Then I would use software on my laptop to do the recording and editing and so on. But since I moved to Anchor recently, I use Anchor for everything. I do my recording on Anchor, and then I also do my publishing and distribution on Anchor as well. With Anchor, you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, and so on. So it's a one-stop shop for recording and distribution. And then we have promotion tools. Now, it doesn't make sense to go into all the stress of recording your podcast and nobody's there to listen to it. So there has to be a way to get people to listen to your podcast. So when I started, I'm going to tell you what I did. When I started, what I did was, first of all, I did some guerrilla marketing. So I would go to church, and when my friends said, "Hey, how are you doing? How was your week?" I'll say, "Fine. have you listened to my podcast? They will say, no, what's a podcast? I'll say, give me your phone. And then I'll grab their phone and subscribe. I'll subscribe them to my podcast. I did that until I got up to 1,000 downloads of my podcasts. It was crazy. I lost all shame, so I just went ahead and grabbed all of my friends' phones. I harassed everybody into downloading my podcast. And okay, so I got 1,000 downloads. Okay, but it was a start. The next thing that I did was I began to distribute it, the link and the updates on WhatsApp. So I would post updates on WhatsApp status saying, oh, I have a new episode. Here's what it's about, and so on. And I'll promote it on WhatsApp. I'll promote it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And like I said, I did a lot of word of mouth. So promoting your podcast in the early days has to be something that you have to be aggressive about. Now, somebody might ask me here, oh, how about paid advertising on Instagram and Facebook? Yeah, I do that today, but that's not how I started. So I would like you to start here. If you've not created your podcast before, or if this is your first time of hearing about podcasting, don't dive straight into paid advertising, okay? Just do the guerrilla marketing bit for now. And then when your podcast is stable and you're ready to invest more money into it, then you can begin to pay for advertising. All right, brilliant. So next, I'd like to take a minute to discuss this special offer with you. All right. So yes, we've gone through what a podcast is, and how to set one up, and some of the benefits of podcasting and so on. But before we go further, I'd like to talk about something that I put together specially just for you. All right. So it's a special offer called Podcasting Made Simple. All right. It's a workshop. Now, it's a 5-day live workshop. Okay. At the end of which you're guaranteed to have a working podcast. Okay. At the end of the 5 days. You're going to be inducted into a podcaster community, okay, in which you'll have weekly mastermind calls. It will help you to accelerate your podcast launch and growth. We're also going to be making available podcasting resources, outline templates, different kinds of templates, detailed walkthroughs, and hours of resources. And one of the things that I get asked is, okay, so when we get into this mastermind or workshop, system of yours, what do we get? So the process really starts with a very intensive 5-day effort to name your podcast, design a great description for your podcast script, and record your podcast trailer. So that when people meet your podcast for the first time, there has to be something that captures their attention. You have to create a trailer about your podcast. You're going to be choosing the overarching theme of your podcast. You're going to be creating your topic list. There's an exercise where you have to create a 20 item topic list where you will be using as a springboard, okay, to set up your other episodes. You're going to be designing your episode outlines. You're going to be recording and editing and designing your episodes. You're going to be learning about best recording techniques. You're going to be creating marketing collateral using your episodes. You're going to be creating audiograms. I'm going to teach you what an audiogram is if you don't know what it is, and how to create them for free. And then I'm going to teach you how to write and record adverts, which you will be placing within your episodes, so that when people listen to your free episodes, you're selling something to them every single time they listen to your episodes. And then you're going to be talking about distributing your podcast and how to grow your audience. All of this stuffed into 5 days. And every day there's going to be an exercise that moves you closer to launching, and not only launching your podcast, but having a framework with which you can drive the consistent improvement and growth of your podcast. So all of this is available. Now, the total value of this product is about $598. Okay, but we're going to be giving you a deal today, and you'll be getting it at $97. Okay. Now, some of you are listening are like, oh, $97. See, the issue with doing this as opposed to trying to do it yourself is that I've seen people who have tried to do it themselves, and many times they struggle and eventually don't follow through. But this is a guaranteed exercise that will ensure that at the end of 5 days, you have a working podcast. Not only that, you have a community that you can lean on as a support system. You also have mentorship. You also have resources that can ensure that you're not just running your podcast in fits and starts, but you're running a growing and thriving entity. So, so consider this while we move into the next phase of the presentation. Now, if you're interested, you can take advantage of this offer at howtosellyourknowledge.com/WS1. Okay, howtosellyourknowledge.com/WS1. All right, so this unique offer is only for people who attend this webinar. So I'd like you to copy out this URL while we dive into the next phase of the presentation. Now we're wrapping up and we're going into the Q&As, which have been sent in ahead of time. Now, when you click on this link, you'll be taken to a page that looks like this. All right. Now, when you get to this page, you click on the call to action, the button that tells you to book your workshop session, and then it will take you forward through the checkout process, and then you can make your order. Now, the details of the workshop will be sent to you upon completion of payment. Now, so I want to go over what we've gone through today. All right. Now, remember, there's going to be a Q&A, and you have the opening to either send in your questions as a chat, or if there's some time left, you can indicate, and then you can ask your questions verbally if you're more comfortable with doing that. So let's dive into the recap. Okay, so we learned about what podcasting is. We talked about the potential profit for first movers. We talked about how to start a podcast, who can create a podcast. We talked about the free tools that are available to you to create your own podcast. We talked about how to name your podcast, and then we also talked about how to market your podcast. This is just an overview. Of course, we had a deeper dive into it, but this is basically an overview. So let's dive into questions. So remember, we're going to be diving into questions that have been sent in by attendees that registered for this webinar, but you can send in your own questions in the chat area, or at the end, if there's still some time, you can ask your questions by unmuting your microphone, indicating, of course, then we'll let you know that you can unmute and ask your questions. So we're going to go over a few questions. All right, so first question. First question, can you suggest good and affordable podcast equipment? Can you suggest good and affordable podcast equipment for great production? So a lot of people ask this question, and maybe Folusho Alamina is looking forward to maybe having a professional setup. Yes, I can suggest great and affordable podcast equipment. Number one, you would need a microphone like the one I am using right here. There are a number of affordable microphones. This one costs about $100. There are a few other great microphones that cost either more or less than it. But if you want great audio, you need a microphone with that has some quality to it. And then you also need a mixer, an audio mixer, to kind of balance out your audio to give it the rich boost. So you can get Behringer mixers. You can get the Rode microphone or the Shure microphones. And then finally, you need a computer, because everything has to go somewhere. So you have to plug these into your computer and then get, I use a Mac. So I use, when I use to edit, I use the free Mac sound editor called GarageBand. But if you're using Windows, then you can download Audacity. It's also free, and then you can use that to edit your audio. So these are basic equipment that I can recommend, but good and affordable, these are relative. So I'm only giving you the bare minimum that you can use to start off your podcasting with some high-end equipment that isn't your smartphone. So Folusho Alamina, I hope I helped out with that answer. Next question, how can I get more audience? Onyinyechi Amo is asking, how can I get more audience? So I just got through the presentation, and the very important thing that you can do is, first of all, do you have an audience? If you don't have an audience, build the audience with the guerrilla marketing techniques that I mentioned. A lot of times people are impatient. They want to go from 0 to 1 million. Now, it's great to go from 0 to 1 million, but nothing really grows that way. You have to start from 1 and get to 2, then to 5 and 10, and then 15 and onwards. So start with your guerrilla marketing with your family, friends, and your network on Instagram, Facebook, on WhatsApp as well, and so on. And then when you get to about 500 people, then you can begin to consider you can collaborate with other people who own podcasts. Now we're setting up a system within the podcaster community, okay, which we have. So when you sign up for the Podcasting Made Simple workshop, you're automatically inducted into the Podcaster Network. The network is a network of podcasters that will allow you connect with other podcasters who have their own following and channel, and you can cross-pollinate your followers so that they can also bring their followers to you, and then you can also help them with your followers and so on. So that is also an opportunity to also grow your audience, Onyinyechi. So I hope that quick answer helps. We have quite a number, so I would like to dive into them as quickly as I can. What does one need to start a podcast? The most important thing, Christiana, that you need to start a podcast is you. That's the most important thing, you. And then your phone, okay? Your phone and Anchor, that's all. Then finally, after you've recorded your first 3 to 5 episodes and you've published them on Anchor, then you need your friends and family. That is all you need. So there's nothing too out there that, I can tell you that you need to create a podcast. No, you just need you, your phone, your Anchor app, your first 5 episodes, and then your family and friends, period. So Christiana, I hope you hear this. That's all you need to start a podcast. What's the best editing software for podcasts? Okay, so the best editing software for podcasts is the one that you can afford and the one that you're most comfortable using. That's really my best answer, because I've found people who spend a lot on software but don't know how to use it. So, and I've seen people who use free software and they are awesome at using it. So is the software that you can use, you're most comfortable using and can afford. So if it's free and you know how to use it very well, that's the best editing software for you. A podcast can only be about your voice, the voice of the other people who are featuring on your podcast, and then maybe the music that introduces the podcast and exits the podcast. Apart from that, there's really not much to it. Last year, for the most of last year, I did not do any fancy editing. I just had the intro, outro, and then just my voice in between, nothing else. Okay, so my most recent episodes are more complicated, but last year I just kept it really simple because I was all about pushing out the content regularly. So Sandra, the best editing software for podcasts is the one you're great at using and you can afford. All right, so that's the simplest answer I can give, Sandra, and I hope that helps. All right, I would like to know how to launch a podcast. Denise is asking. I've already covered that content, so simply get your smartphone, install Anchor on it, set up the podcast name and everything else that is required on the app, and then begin recording. Record your first 5 episodes. Now, I would sincerely hope that you make out the time to be part of the next cohort of our podcasting made simple classes. Okay, there's just so much more to say that can't be squeezed into this 45-minute segment. So please, I hope you remember everything I've said earlier, but still make out time to attend the workshop. It's really important. All right. So Karina Martinez says, I'd like to know about copyright of audio used as effects or music backgrounds. Karina Martinez. So if you use the Anchor app, all right, there's really no copyright restriction. They provide free sound stubs and background music within the platform, so you don't need to worry about that. There's no copyright infringement when you use it on your episodes. So it's not very clear if you decide to move your podcast to another platform. Okay, it's not very clear. So for that, if you're using Anchor, you may need to go into their terms of use and understand much more about how that works. But if you're thinking about buying background music effects and so on, there are websites where you can buy royalty-free music and so on. There are several out there. There's one that I use a lot called Ben Sounds. You can go there and then you can buy royalty free and also paid soundtracks and music for your intros and so on. All right, so Karina, I hope that helps. All right, next, I want to know how to grow my audience and start earning with my your audience by generating a following with your family and friends, and then after that you can begin to transition to other means on social media and paid advertising. Now, once you grow your audience to a particular size, you can begin to expect businesses and corporate bodies to covet being on your platform. All right. So once you begin to see that kind of interest, you can be sure that you can tell them, okay, if you want to feature your adverts or products on my platform, this is what you pay. Now you can start with a low price, but the bigger your audience gets, the more you can safely charge for them to appear on your podcast. So you start with using some of the techniques that I had mentioned earlier, Precious, and then you can go from there. Once you grow to a particular point, then you can charge more for products to be advertised on your platform. And then finally, a question by Adebayo: do you need voice training to succeed at podcasting? Voice training helps, but you don't need to get voice training first before you get started. You can start with your voice as is, and like I said, continually work at improving yourself. And then eventually you'll get great at it. Okay, so that's the last question. Okay, and I'd like to know if there's anyone interested in posting a question or asking a question before we wrap this up. We have only a couple of minutes left. So is there anyone that's interested in asking a question in real time before we wrap this up? Okay, going once, going twice. I really like live questions. They put me on the spot, and then they kind of help with the engagement. And a few people assume that these sessions are recorded, but they're actually live. So one more opportunity to ask a question. Don't be shy. All right, so we've covered about 8 questions, and I want to assume that all of the questions that you could possibly ask have been handled. All right, so no one is biting. All right, so let's wrap this up. So finally, just before we leave, please remember that there's an offer for our Podcasting Made Simple workshop. So remember, okay, so these numbers are wrong. Let me go back to the right numbers. Sorry about that. We are offering $97 for a $598 value product. And we would like you to take advantage of this. The link, of course, is in the footer of this slide, and you can also see it towards the end of this session. So you can get to this at howtosellyourknowledge.com/WS1. So you get a 5-day live workshop, a podcaster community where you get the support that you need to drive your podcast and grow it. And then you also have a bunch of other resources that would ensure your success as a podcaster. All right, so before I go, I'd like to encourage you, do not procrastinate. Okay, don't procrastinate. Speaking for myself, I did that for 20 years, did not create my content, did not do what I was supposed to do, dragged my feet, and I wonder every day, if I had started back then, what will I have been doing by now with my content? So it's always great for us to start today, not tomorrow. Don't say tomorrow I'll do it or next year I'll do it. Start today. The best time to have planted a tree is what? Last year, someone says, or 10 years ago. All right, so let's take action immediately. Don't overplan. Don't say, okay, I'm going to wait until I get my microphone. Now, you might see this really nice microphone in front of me, but I mostly use my smartphone to record my episodes. All right. So if you're interested in listening to any of my podcast episodes, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you can go to Spotify, and then you can go to Castbox, anywhere great podcasts are heard. You can go to Apple Music and then search for Traffic Conversations. And then you can listen to my podcast episodes. Most of them have been recorded using my smartphone, so you don't need to wait until you get really, really expensive gear. I'm an advocate for excellence, but the best thing to do is to start with what you have and do it excellently at that level. And don't be perfect. Okay, don't be perfect. People who hear me say this today, who knew me 15 years ago, will be like, what have you done with the real? Yeah, because I am Mr. Perfect. I like things being perfect, but don't be perfect, because perfection is going to delay you from taking action. And then finally, start tonight. Dr. Folu says that she already has the app on her phone. Brilliant. Start recording if you haven't started recording. Record more if you've already started recording. Take some of the tips that we've offered here and put some fuel into that fire and create more content. There's so much more to do and to learn, and I would encourage you to do your very best. So thank you for being a part of tonight's presentation. Thank you for contributing by simply engaging and responding in your own way. Thank you for also taking out the time to sit through the entire presentation. We were aiming for 45 minutes and we are 4 minutes over, but thank you so much for being so gracious and staying to the very end. So thank you so much. Good night and have a lovely week ahead.